The Middle-aged Bodcast is proud to support Age UK's Act Now, Age Better summer campaign.
Act Now, Age Better is bringing together the world of sport, physical activity and movement on a scale not seen before to inspire people in midlife to get moving to lead a healthier later life.
It's the Middle-aged Bodcast. Getting older, but having some laughs.
Welcome to the Middle-aged Bodcast with me, Raging Rich.
And me, T.A. Shalano.
And today we have a very special guest episode for our listeners today.
We do indeed, Rich. We've been sort of focusing on the Age UK's Act Now, Age Better campaign this season. And I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Age UK's Chief Executive Officer, Paul Farmer. Welcome, Paul.
Hi there, guys. Nice to see you. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, really looking forward to this. This is closing out our season with the campaign as well. So absolutely fantastic that you can come and join us around that. And just tell us about the Age UK's Act Now, Age Better campaign.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks very much for having me on, and thanks for promoting the campaign. We've been thinking for a while now about how do we help all of us to think about how we age better. And quite the starting point for this is when we spent quite a lot of time at Age UK talking to people in their 70s and 80s, and they said to us they wish they knew in their 50s and 60s what they now know in their 70s and 80s, and particularly about the importance of physical activity for later life. So we were thinking about this and thinking, well, how do we turn that into something which is relatable to people? How can we start telling a story about why it's really important to take your physical health and your mental health seriously at any point in your life, but particularly in your 50s and onwards. So that's how the campaign was sort of conceived, was thought up. We thought we could try and get together some people who would be happy to talk about their own experiences and be kind of role models, if you like, for people, but also it gives us a chance to send out some really important messages about the importance of physical activity for our physical health and our mental health as we get older. So that's how the campaign was kind of conceived, and we're now in the second year of the campaign, and we've got so many people supporting us. It's really great to see.
Been fantastic, and we've been covering obviously throughout our season we've been talking quite a lot about the campaign, and we did an episode a few weeks ago where we spoke about the findings that Age UK had made with a lot of people when they've been at school and physical education, and actually that kind of becoming a barrier to people wanting to then go into being active later on in life. And actually we talked about it and sort of brought back a lot of memories of why we've probably not done that as well, and sort of driven us to start doing a little bit more, going on park runs, and I think we said taking up tennis, we wanted to try and do a bit more of that and that kind of thing, taking up a bit of a sport.
You're going to play as a doubles? Are you playing as a doubles pair together?
I think we're going to play against each other, possibly.
We'd end up falling out if we were playing as a team. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we'd have to make sure we just started off playing against each other. But we found it really interesting that those stats and those findings. What has been for you some of the highlights of the campaign in general?
You're absolutely right. That really struck a chord with so many people when we started looking at the impact of PE at school on the way that so many people thought about physical activity. So for 4 million people in their midlife, that's people like you and me, I think, school PE lessons had put them off exercise and sport for life. It leads to 6 million people feeling anxious about joining a sports group or class at their age. So that means that a lot of this stuff is really deeply rooted, isn't it? And so if you're now in your 50s or 60s, you were growing up in the sort of 70s and 80s, and you've got this kind of image, haven't you, of those kind of windy places where you had to go and do cross country or a really kind of grim kind of playground kind of image of a place where you just didn't want to do sport. And it applied to women particularly, but also to guys as well. And also that whole idea that somehow sport had to be one particular thing, it had to be football or it had to be cricket or it had to be athletics. When one of the great joys of this campaign has been that so many organisations have said, we'll kind of open our doors, allow people to come in and have a go at something. So you guys are interested in tennis. We've got a really great part. One of the campaign supporters is the Lawn Tennis Association. And, we know that a lot of clubs have agreed to run taster sessions for people so that you can have a go. And I really firmly believe that we've all got at least one sport or physical kind of activity that we're going to love doing. And unfortunately, you don't always get that chance, do you, to be able to have a go. So the fact that in this year's campaign, we've got more than 50 organisations, everybody from the Lawn Tennis Association to the Football Association, right the way through to sports like pickleball and paddle, those kinds of things as well. Organisations saying they'll open their doors to give people a chance to have a go, and that's how it's starting. And we're getting such great feedback from people who are turning up at different events saying, I'd never tried this before, and now I am having a go. So, and you mentioned park runs earlier. I'm a regular park runner. I know it does me a lot of good, and what a joyful thing that is to go to spend some time with people, and it doesn't matter whether you're running or walking. It just gets you up, gets you out, very social, and creates that connection. So yeah, we've been really pleased with the response we've had to it so far, because this is a really important issue, for so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic, and anything that sort of breaks down the barriers to enabling people in terms of costs and things like that as well, and enabling people to get those tasters and do things is great. I suppose one of the things that sort of jumps out at me at the moment in terms of being the summer and obviously the great weather that we've had does encourage, I've noticed this even personally, encourages you to get out more and perhaps be more active. So what plans do you have to sort of build on the progress when it sort of delves into the autumn and winter and perhaps we're inclined to be less active?
Yeah, we are, aren't we? There's something really nice about, an early morning when it's light and the evening when it's light. So it makes it much easier for people to go out, and of course, if the weather's, it hasn't rained for months, has it? So so from that point of view, it's great. Actually, people do have to be careful in the hot weather, by the way. Just to mention, it is pretty hot out there, and you do have to make sure you're really well hydrated and protected from the sun. But yeah, I think the next stage for this is thinking about, well, of course, the joy of sport and physical activity is that as some sports come and then some sports disappear, don't they, and other sports appear. So obviously, in the kind of winter months, you think about the kind of winter sports. So obviously, lots of team sports, football, rugby, etc. There's also initiatives that are more indoor focused. So lots of our local age UKs run indoor activities like, sort of Tai Chi classes and those kinds of things, because physical activity doesn't necessarily have to be, running a marathon or doing doing kind of huge kind of endurance activities. And a lot of this, I suppose, as we move into the autumn winter months, I think possibly it's a good time to think about sort of parts of your body that you could do something about, where the strengthening really matters. So as you get older, for example, your upper body strength is really important, and you lose. As you age, you tend to lose that upper body strength that you have. So this is a good moment to think about those activities, those exercises that you can do to help with that. So we've got a partnership with a kind of network of charities called We're Undefeatable, which has got a really brilliant app that people can download really easily. And that has some very, very simple things that you can do to think about building up your upper body strength. And then, of course, lots of sports don't stop. Park runs are rain or shine. Yeah, a lot of people love going running in the rain. They say once you get over that idea of walking out in the rain, lots of people really love doing that. And autumn running and walking is sometimes the best thing you can do, isn't it? So it's that kind of message that it doesn't, you can chop and change as well in line with the seasons or what you're interested in. But it does take a bit of extra effort, that's for sure.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I must admit, I did my first park run ever last week. I went with TA and I walked it. I'll fully admit I walked the whole way around. I did attempt to run. It was probably a bad plan with my knees at the moment. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And there were so many people there. I think one of our other local park runs was cancelled for that week because there was an event on. So there was a lot more people there than there normally are. But it was fantastic. There was people of different abilities, people who taken their dogs with them so they could walk their dogs around it, people who'd taken little buggies and were pushing their kids around and stuff. It was amazing. I thought it was such a fantastic thing, and I'd never really realised what they did with the park run, even though TA had told me about it, until I actually experienced it. I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And actually, it's something now I really want to get into and do a little bit more of, more regularly, than I have been, because it's certainly something that I think for me, I need structure with exercise, because I'll just start doing something. We did our 12-mile charity walk at the start of this year, and it was great, and the build up to it and actually doing it. But I did find afterwards, because I didn't have that structure in place anymore and that event, I kind of tailed off from it, and getting back into it's something I really want to do. And the park run just seemed like a great way of doing that.
Well, I don't know if we can say we are talking on a Saturday morning, and so I went to parkrun this morning. There's about 700 people turn up, and you're absolutely right. It's everybody, and sometimes I normally run, but sometimes I volunteer. And a couple of months ago, I volunteered because the whole thing is run by volunteers. Probably people know, but it's all run by volunteers, which is great. So people, it's really good if people have a take their turn. So I was volunteering the other day. So I was the tail walker on the park walk. So basically I was the last person to finish. So I came in, 758th or something. And I was walking along with this guy, mainly with this guy. And it's a little bit like the guy you're interviewing in your last episode. So he was telling me how he had lost a lot of weight by doing walking, coming to park run / park walk, and he normally walks most of the way, and we had a really great chat, and he was sort of walking along with me, and we were talking to everybody else. It's so social, it's great, isn't it? Anyway, with about 200 meters to go, he said, "Thanks for the chat, see you later," and sped off to the finish. He just sprinted his way to the end. So it was okay, fine, that's great. But it just goes to show, you just kind of build. You're going to build you enjoy it. You feel relaxed. You feel more comfortable. And it's almost like the complete opposite to the way that people think about sport and PE lessons, isn't it? It's social. It's relaxed. You can do it at your own pace. You can do things. Yeah. And all of this is really building your endurance, your resilience, because it's a 5K anything, a 5K walk, a 5K run, and you're building your endurance, you're building your fitness. It's really brilliant for your core, just for your core, your basic core capability, and all of that is just good stuff for your cardiovascular, for your muscle fitness, and so on and so forth. And you're enjoying it. I mean, this is great stuff. Think how much the NHS is saving as a result of us taking part in all of those things.
It's very true. I think this is the thing, isn't it, now with, and you mentioned there with sort of the winter sports and things like Tai Chi. I mean, my dad, he's in his mid-70s, and he actually said last weekend, if there was some Tai Chi stuff around here, I'd probably go and try that out. So when you mentioned that, I thought, oh, that's quite an interesting one, and I'll try and find somewhere around local to us if I can for him to give that a go, because I think it's important that people do, if they have a bit of an interest. I mean, like we said, the park run, TA mentioned it to me. I was a bit unsure and then tried it and really enjoyed it. So I think it is worth going out there and just give it a try. Anyone who's not sure, just give it a try, because actually find you enjoy it. And it's something then, like you say, things can be social. They get you out there, they get you active, you're meeting new people. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I was. You're absolutely right, and I'm very lucky at Age UK. We have a network of local age UKs all over the country. There's local age UKs pretty near everyone. And every time I go to a local age UK, I'm nearly always dragged into some kind of physical activity class. So the Tai Chi, I'm very bad at Tai Chi apparently, or that's what the class told me. I didn't think you could be good or bad at Tai Chi, but I think but it's really good for your kind of, your posture and the way you sit and stand, all of those kinds of things. And I've done walking football and walking cricket, which is also great sports if you're a little bit older and you're not, you like the team sport idea, but you're not necessarily quite fit enough to be able to do the running versions of those sports. And then one time I was taken up by the local chief exec of the local age UK, and there was a ballet lesson going on, so I was kind of thrown into ballet class as well. So there's no end to the different sort of variety of activities that you can find. And you're right, sometimes the difference is somebody going along with you, because everybody feels a bit nervous about going to something like that for the first time, don't they? So that's where our, befrienders often play a role in, bringing people along to events, or just friends and family turn up and give it a go. So wherever you are in the country, just look up your local age UK, and there's bound to be activities that they can do. So we'll be looking forward to welcoming your dad anytime soon.
Fantastic. I'll let him know about that.
Rich obviously mentioned the walk that we did for charity, and I note that you've completed a number of sponsored challenges yourself. I think you've run the London Marathon, climbed Spain's highest peak, and obviously you're in sort of a busy role as a CEO. We've mentioned Parkrun, but what else do you do day to day that helps to support and maintain your physical and mental health and well-being?
Yeah, I've for a very long time, I've really found sport and physical activity the thing that keeps me safe mentally as well as safe physically. So it's definitely been a part of what I do. I used to play a lot of team sport, but that's when you're doing a busy job and you've got a busy life and a family. Those are the things that quite often get squeezed, aren't they? So for me, it's running and cycling. In this weather, it's been really nice to get up really out quite early and go for a bike ride when it's really quiet. And there's nothing nicer than that when the weather's so good as it's been. A few years ago, I did the Ride 100, which is a 100-mile bike ride in a day. That was really hard work. I'm not sure I could do that now, but it was good. I do like a challenge. I'm 60 this year, so I'm working my way up to doing a kind of 60-mile bike ride, because I think that will do as a challenge. And I've done a few. You're right. The Spain walk was good. And my fundraising team nearly always have some kind of challenge that they've got lined up for me, and one of which I think is going to be an abseil, and that's the other thing they've got planned for me, which I'm really not looking forward to. But I'm not sure whether that's very good for my mental health. But generally speaking, that kind of just trying to do something 2 or 3 times a week, just kind of fitting it into everything that you're doing is what keeps me going. And when I was chief exec at Mind, we did a lot of work about the importance of physical activity for your mental health. And I'm sure you'll remember this, when during COVID, that 1 hour a day when you were able to go out and go for a walk or do some kind of physical activity, I think that was so important for people, just for your mental health, to be able to go and do that. That's a big part of what keeps me on the straight and narrow, because when you are doing these kinds of jobs, there's quite a lot of stress around. So you really have to make sure you're looking after yourself so that you can look after other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting you sort of brought in there the sort of connection between physical health and mental health, because obviously the two things do to some extent go hand in hand, don't they? And, you've now, in terms of mentioning you've been a CEO of Mind previously, how has that then sort of helped shape how you've brought that into this CEO role?
Yeah, I think, it's an absolute privilege to work for Mind and to be chief exec there for quite a while. And we in that period, we did a lot of work to really try to change the conversation about mental health. And I think in that we did a lot of work. We found a really interesting partner and ally in the sporting world. So we did quite a lot of work with different sporting bodies, both around supporting elite sports people. So we did some work with Marcus Trescothick, who was an England cricketer. Some of you you'll probably remember he left an Ashes tour because of his mental health. We did quite a lot of work with a number of sports actually at the elite side to try to help people think about how important the sort of psychological benefits of thinking about mental health is for your elite sports people. But then that also trickled its way down into talking about how important physical activity is just for all our mental health. So when I came to Age UK, it was kind of an easy pickup, if you like, because we know that regular movement of all sorts is linked to lower levels of stress, lower levels of anxiety, lower levels of depression, and of course can lift your overall mood. There's that thing, that kind of endorphin thing, isn't there? When you come in from having done some physical activity, you're just feeling a little bit better about life. And of course, for us at Age UK, and particularly in this campaign, where we're particularly focusing on our midlife, and that's traditionally roughly somewhere between 50 and 65, I guess, these days. We know there's quite often a period of change for people. So, you might have kids growing up, but you've also got older parents that you're worrying about, as you were saying earlier. So you need to pay a little bit of extra attention to your mental health, I think. And we also know that exercise bit can make a real difference. So that's one of the reasons why we've introduced Act Now Age Better as a kind of real nod to thinking about our role as an organisation that is here. I mean, Age UK is partly a mental health organisation as well. So we're here supporting lots of people's mental health and giving people hopefully some really helpful tips. And perhaps particularly in this area, we particularly think about people who experience loneliness and isolation. I think that when older people talk about loneliness and isolation, it's equivalent to younger people talking about depression and anxiety. It's the same feelings. It's that same feeling of feeling quite hopeless, feeling as though nobody's really looking out for you, feeling quite unconfident about reaching out and getting help and support. So all of those feelings are often rooted in your mental health, and the solutions to them can be helped through physical activity and creating that sense of connection with other people.
I think that's really true, isn't it? The mental health side of things, you do find, I've found it certainly from, like we say, with the walk that we did and with the park run and things, it's really helped my mental health massively. And I make no secret of the fact I struggled massively last year with my mental health, and I'd been attending Andy's Man Club, and that was a really good help to me. But then on top of that, to add the going out and walking around, especially like we've said with this amazing weather that we've had quite recently, it's just been really good to get out there and do things, and I want to be making a lot more of that. Hopefully when it does start to turn and it's the not so nice weather, that'll still be something that I can keep up. You chaired the Independent Mental Health Task Force that produced the 5-year forward view for mental health, which was published 2016 and 2017, and co-authored Thriving at Work, which was an independent review for the government on how employers can better support mental health to their employees. What would you say your assessment is of that project sort of in the last decade? Yeah,
so they were two very important pieces of work. Some ways they feel like quite a long time ago now, don't they? Before all kinds of other things were happening. Let's take both of them in turn. So the NHS, the 5-year forward review, which was a cross-governmental plan, but it was basically about NHS provision for mental health. We worked really hard with bits of government to get a strong commitment to additional investment in mental health services and support, and also got other government departments to really think about what their role was. So departments like education. So what's the role of education and schools in mental health, and also other departments like the Department for Work and Pensions, for example. So that I think that put mental health into a good place, and I suppose it's like all of us. We need as we were just saying earlier, we need a plan, don't we? We always need a plan to work to, or we need like a bit of structure, and that 5-year forward view created some structure for the mental health world to work towards. And it kind of ended in 2020, just as COVID was beginning. And I remember going to a meeting just before COVID was a thing, and we were really going well, and we made a lot of the kind of targets have been achieved overall, and then COVID hit. And I think what has been apparent since then is that COVID had a really big impact on a lot of people's mental health, and actually a little bit like you were saying, and thank you for sharing that, because I think sometimes these things take a while to work through, so you might be struggling with your mental health, but you're trying to manage it, aren't you? You're trying to do the best you can with it. And then you get to a point when actually you really do need to work, you need some extra help or whatever it is. And I think we're still, even now, even though COVID was several years ago, I think we're still seeing the consequences of that, especially for younger people, where there's been a clear rise in mental health needs. So I think, the 5-year plan created a platform, but I know the government's currently doing some work on what a new plan would look like. So that's encouraging. On workplace mental health, when we did Thriving at Work, very few companies did very much about workplace mental health. And we had to work really hard to find organizations that were doing much to support their employees. And we found some interesting places that you wouldn't have necessarily expected. So we found that quite a lot of construction companies were doing some really good work. Traditionally kind of male-dominated workforce, but they were doing, a number of companies were doing some work there and the reason for that was because they'd found that more construction workers were dying by suicide than were dying as a result of on-site accidents. And they suddenly turned their kind of health and safety focus onto supporting the mental health of their staff. Since that review, I think I'd be surprised if any of your listeners who are in a workplace didn't have some kind of mental health support available, an employee assistance program or mental health first aiders, those kinds of things. And that is a real testament to the way that employers, who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting at the moment in supporting mental health of their employees, have really embraced that whole idea that it's part of a employer responsibility. And I think we've probably got to a point now where we should almost run that review again and see what's worked. What has really made a difference to young men who are coming into the workplace for the first time? Or what about older workers who maybe are getting towards the end of their career and thinking about their mental health needs? Are they different? Or what about the experiences of women in traditionally male workplaces, or indeed sort of men in traditionally female workplaces? How do have we actually got the right structures, the right things in place for people to be able to really get the right help and support? So we've got to learn on mental health. We're learning all the time about what's helping us and also what doesn't help, because some things don't make a big difference. It's one of the great frustrations, I think, that we don't know for sure what definitely helps for everyone. We just know there's a menu and you should try things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic. It must be sort of interesting then reflecting on the work that you've done and seeing those initiatives that have come in and how that, sort of links into the workplace and people's experience and that change. And I think that's one of the interesting things about, obviously, your career has been spent, predominantly obviously with the charity sector and a lot around mental health and physical health. What is your reflection on that? Is there anything from your sort of time in the charity sector that you would change or do differently, or sort of key sort of highlights from your career?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I mean, there's loads of stuff I do differently, that's for sure. What I think is, and I'd encourage anybody who's listening to this to think about coming to work in our sector. We don't shout about it a lot, and I think we should shout about it a bit more. It's an incredibly rewarding place to be. And one of the things that I think has been great about what I've been able to do, and what we certainly try to do this at Age UK for our staff and at Mind, is we give people a chance to try things. And so you've got the opportunity to learn whilst you're working, so you develop your skills as you go. And so that means that there's a phrase, isn't there? You're learning on the job. Well, that's what we do, because we don't necessarily have the it's not these are often not technical jobs. They're jobs that require a little bit of humanity, good listening skills, good learning skills to think about how do you support somebody who's in need, and how do you tell that story, and so on and so forth. So I'd really encourage people to come in. What would I do differently? I think I would always try to be as open as possible to learning more, because you can kind of quite easily get stuck, can't you, in a job. You can just get stuck in a tram line. And I think the more you keep open, the better that is. And what are the lessons I take from it is very much, throw yourself into things, try things, open yourselves up to different types of experiences. I'm very lucky in Age UK. I get to go and see, we're a very broad organisation. For example, we run 275 charity shops. I never thought for one moment that I'd become an expert retailer, understanding how charity shops function. But you learn, don't you, by going in there and understanding how those shops work, and what is it that makes for a good charity shop? What is it that makes for a for a charity shop that isn't necessarily working that well? So you just have to be open to learning, and that makes a big difference, I think. I'm very lucky to have worked in some great organisations, and I'd really encourage people who, maybe are listening and they're thinking, oh, the charity sector's not, we've got a bit of an image problem. I think a lot of people think about the charity sector in a particular way, but I can honestly say that the people who work in our sector are fabulous people. All committed, want to make a difference to people's lives, and there's loads. We're not perfect employers. There's lots of frustrations like any job, but people do really care and want to make a difference.
That's fantastic, and it sounds like it's given you some really interesting perspectives on things, like you say, the charity shops and having to then learn about the retail side of things. I mean, that's something that you wouldn't think of, would you, if you're kind of thinking about in kind of the sort of the role that you're doing. Everyone would be thinking it's all board meetings and it's all, that kind of perception that people have. But actually, there's so much more involved in that than just that side of things. And it's fantastic to hear that there's so much involvement in the overall sort of image of Age UK and all the different strands of it that you get to be involved within.
Yeah, I do have quite a lot of board meetings though, but anyway, so there is some of that. We employ, across the country, across our network of Age UK, so we employ 7,000 staff. We have 25,000 volunteers giving their time for free. We're a big kind of network of organisations, and so it's never dull. I can absolutely assure you that it really isn't, and you get a chance to engage in the issues that are important to older people. And absolutely the best part of my job is when I spend time with older people who use our services, and they tell me exactly what they think. They're very clear about what we should be doing in our campaigning work, or how we should be providing better services for them. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to listen to them and be a voice for older people in all kinds of different spaces. And that's what absolutely drives me to raise money for the work we do to speak up and stand up on behalf of older people, and in the case of this conversation, to also be encouraging all of us to think about what our later life is going to look like. We still are a bit in denial about it all. We don't really like talking about it. We don't really, it's a bit kind of over there, isn't it? We don't really want to think about what our later life's going to be like. But, it's a good time to start thinking about it. And in a different world where chances are, with the right kind of help and support, we'll be living into our 80s and 90s. So if you're now in your 40s or early 50s, you're barely halfway through. So what are you going to do with the next chapter in your life? And how do we help people think about that? And then, of course, most importantly, how do we help and support people who are in the final chapter of their life to have a really good quality support? So there's plenty for us to get into here, and there's lots of real opportunity to make change happen.
Yeah, that's really, really fantastic. Since we've been obviously doing this show, I think it's made us think more about it, perhaps as well, in a way that maybe we wouldn't have done, and the conversations that we've had with people and the experiences. And I think you mentioned there about sort of volunteering. And actually, I think that's an interesting thing where when you were referencing them again, getting out for physical health, mental health, isolation, actually volunteering, I suppose, and doing something in your community as well could benefit you and others in giving something back is another thing that perhaps people sometimes I think overlook actually. And you mentioned earlier on the volunteering for parkrun. I mean, I've looked at it, I've done a few parkruns and I've never done the volunteering yet, but I've looked at it on the app and thought, well, actually, maybe I should every so often should go and be a volunteer. Every few you run, volunteer and give something back. And so I think, and that again can be beneficial. So yeah, it's just really, really important. I think in terms of the age side of things as well, where you mentioned about obviously getting to 50 to 65 and older. I mean, so we're in our mid 40s. And I think the earlier actually that you start to think about, your physical health and well-being, the more chance there is of you then, avoiding falling into poorer health. So I think the earlier that you can start, the better. And it's one of those things somebody says, well, it's never too late to start as well. So if you haven't been that active, as maybe you might have been, there's nothing to stop you and making a good start. And obviously your campaign has done a fantastic thing to try and drive that home. So we obviously massively commend your organisation for that. We have one sort of slightly different question off this. We noted that you recently appeared as a guest on Desert Island Discs with some fantastic song choices, by the way. How did you find that as a different experience?
Yeah, well, it was an extraordinary privilege to do. It's something that it's a program that I've admired for ages, so it's always a bit weird when you find yourself on it, isn't it? I think I would say it was in equal parts. It was quite terrifying because although I do a fair bit of broadcasting, I don't often talk a lot about myself. It was a very exciting experience, to be on a show that has got this kind of iconic status. And it was quite emotional because I was talking about parts of my life and in that particularly losing my wife a few years ago, which I hadn't talked about in public before. So it was a real mixture of the three things, but I was, I wanted to do it in order to be able to talk about what we do in the sector. And as a charity leader, I do feel I have a kind of responsibility to be able to talk about that, as well as, pay tribute to the people in my life that have helped and supported me and have been very important to me. So yeah, it was quite an experience. And Lauren is very lovely. Choosing the tracks, by the way, is incredibly difficult. I don't know about you. I chatted to somebody the other day and they said, yeah, I know exactly what my 8 tracks would be if I was asked on the show. It's like, okay, that's quite impressive, isn't it? I found it incredibly difficult when you think about all the music and, I didn't have Kinnicky on my long list, sadly.
I'd be able to pick about 2 songs if I was on it. I think without having to really think about it, I think it'd be really hard to do.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it really was.
We'll have to have a think about that after the show.
You should do it. You guys should do it on your show. You should have you should have your Middle-aged Bodcast Desert Island Disc special.
That's it. That's sold. We're definitely going for that. Thank you for that. I think we're coming towards the end of the conversation today, Paul. I mean, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us about this and everything about the campaign. We do have a tradition here on the programme, do we not, Rich?
We do indeed. So again, as TA said, thank you very much, Paul, for joining us. We really appreciate you giving up your time. What we like to do on the podcast is at the end, we give the floor to our guest to give any words of wisdom, anything they want to say, wrapping up the episode. So if there's anything you would like to say to our listeners, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks very much, guys, for having me. It's been a really great show. I've really enjoyed it. I think if there's one thing I'd really encourage your listeners to do, it's to think about taking part in some physical activity in order for us to act now to age better. We are living in a world where so many people are living for longer, and that's a great thing. But we're also living in a world where people are not living healthily for longer. So there's something that each and every one of us can do, both for ourselves, but also for our friends and family. So if there's one thing you do, maybe after having listened to this podcast, go and chat to a friend or knock on the neighbour's door or chat to a member of your family and go out for a walk together and spend some time with each other. It'll be good for your physical health. It'll be good for your mental health.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Great. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Want more middle-aged podcast in your life? Of course you do. Follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes stuff, extra larks and all our latest updates. We're on Instagram and Threads at Middle-aged Bodcast. Facebook's easier. Just head to facebook.com/middle-aged podcast. If you're still hanging on to Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, we're at Middle-aged Bodcast. And if you're on Blue Sky, it's at middleagedpodcast.bsky.social. Or you can swing by our website, middleagedpodcast.co.uk. Give us a follow and stay in the loop. Cheers for listening.